At the threshold of the nightmare, Leo, Maya, and Chris took their first hesitant steps onto the 11th floor. The air was cold, smelling of decay and dead flowers. The silence was broken only by the constant buzzing from the walls and the distant pulsing of the red cross visible through the only window. The trap was set. Chris, with a gleam in his eyes, advanced down the distorted corridor, grey dust rising with each step. Leo, still filming by instinct but with trembling hands, followed him, torn between curiosity and terror. Maya, not wanting to be left alone, clutched Leo's arm, her eyes scanning every shadow. As they passed a half-open door, the sound of a child crying made them stop. Maya wanted to investigate, but Chris stopped her with a firm gesture. "It's not real," he whispered. "It's bait." As if to confirm his words, the crying transformed into a high-pitched metallic laugh that faded down the corridor, leaving only the echo. The hotel room doors in this distorted plane were thick, rusty bars like abandoned cages, and behind them, the unimaginable. In the first cell room on the right, a humanoid form was huddled in the corner. It had no arms, only darkened stumps. Its greenish-grey skin was covered with wounds. The creature raised its head, revealing a face without eyes, just empty sockets, and a hole where the mouth should be, from which came a constant moan. Maya stifled a scream, covering her mouth. Leo backed away, nearly dropping the camera. Chris, however, approached the bars, observing the creature with interest. He commented that it seemed like a soul punished for its inability to act in life, or perhaps a thief whose hands were removed. As they moved away from the first cell, the floor beneath their feet began to change. What had seemed like concrete covered with dust now revealed itself as an organic, almost fleshy surface that yielded slightly with each step. Dark veins pulsed beneath the surface, as if the corridor itself was alive. Leo pointed the camera downward, capturing the transformation, but the viewfinder showed only static. They continued down the corridor, dragged more by horror than by their own will. Each cell revealed a new abomination. In one, a translucent being floated above the ground, covered with sores that leaked a dark substance, its milky eyes fixed on them with sadness and hunger. In another, a pale, obese figure sitting in midair devoured its own fingers, one by one, with sounds of breaking bones. In a particularly dark cell, they saw only an old foggy mirror. When they passed in front, their reflections appeared with seconds of delay and with expressions different from their own, wide, malicious smiles they weren't making. Maya pulled Leo away, but not before noticing that Chris's reflection showed no eyes, only empty, dark sockets. Leo tried to film, but the images came out distorted, as if reality refused to record such horrors. The smell in each cell was different: sulfur, rotten meat, rusty metal. Suddenly, an intense cold took over the corridor. The temperature dropped drastically, and their breaths formed dense clouds in the air. A sound of dragging footsteps came from behind them. When they turned, they saw a hooded figure carrying a rusty scythe. The figure stopped a few meters away, motionless. Chris murmured that it was just an observer, not a hunter, and that they should continue forward without looking directly at it. Maya whispered that it looked like a zoo of condemned souls. Chris corrected her, saying it was a museum of sins, where each one was a manifestation of their transgressions, trapped in a cycle of punishment. As they turned a corner, they found a larger, circular room with several doors. In the center, a metal table stained with dark red, with rusty surgical instruments scattered about. Above the table, hanging from the ceiling by hooks, were several transparent plastic bags containing what appeared to be human organs preserved in some liquid. Each bag had a tag with names written in an ancient calligraphy. Leo approached to read one of the tags, but Chris pulled him back forcefully. "They're identity traps," he explained. "If you read your own name, your soul gets trapped in the organ." Maya noticed that one of the bags contained what appeared to be a still-beating heart. When they reached the end of the main corridor, they faced something more disturbing. 3 larger cells stood out in the twilight. Their bars were open, the locks broken on the floor. If you're enjoying this horror story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The silence grew heavier. The buzzing intensified. From the 3 open cages emanated a sense of ancient power and malevolence, a devastating and demonic aura. Chris, now pale, explained that these were the cages of the wardens, alpha spirits of that sector, who shouldn't be loose. Leo asked what the wardens were, but before the answer came, a wet, dragging sound echoed from the side corridor. They tried to go back the way they came, but discovered that the corridor had changed. Where there had been a passage before, now there was only a solid wall with a crude drawing of a door, as if made by a child with red chalk. Chris touched the drawing, and his fingers came back stained with a substance that looked like fresh blood. From the darkness emerged a tall, thin figure covered in dark rags. Its face was a smooth, pale mask with no features except for 2 black holes where the eyes should be. In one bony hand with long fingers, it held a giant needle from which hung a dark thread made of human hair. Chris identified the creature as the Stitcher, who collected screams by sewing shut the mouths of its victims. The creature moved quickly and attacked Chris. With precision, it drove the needle through his lips, the sound of metal piercing flesh and teeth clearly audible. Blood gushed. Chris's eyes widened in agony. The creature pulled the thread, sewing his mouth with wide stitches, and disappeared into the darkness, leaving Chris lying on the floor silently convulsing, blood pooling beneath him. Leo and Maya watched the murder, petrified. The smell of fresh blood mixed with that of the environment. Leo shouted that they needed to leave and pulled Maya toward the elevator, but the path was blocked. As they ran, the corridor seemed longer, as if it was stretching as they advanced. The walls began to ooze a dark liquid that formed strange patterns, almost like letters of an unknown alphabet. The floor beneath their feet became increasingly soft and unstable. From the second open cage emerged a female entity. She wore a white dress stained with blood. Her face was tragically beautiful, but her eyes were large and black, with tears flowing from them that solidified into shards of black glass when they hit the floor. The sound of glass breaking with each step was like a chandelier slowly falling. Leo recognized the creature as the Obsidian Weeper, whose tears cut the soul. She glided toward Maya, who was paralyzed. The entity touched Maya's face, and where her fingers touched, the skin seemed to freeze and crack. Maya tried to scream, but only a dry sound escaped. The glass tears fell on her, causing cuts that didn't bleed but leaked a bluish light. Her body covered with black ice, her screams turned into weak moans. With a final breath that condensed in the air, Maya fell, her body transforming into an ice statue that shattered upon touching the floor. Leo, alone, backed up against the wall, the camera forgotten in his hands. Around him, the shadows on the walls began to move independently, forming humanoid silhouettes that seemed to be watching him. The buzzing in the walls increased, transforming into unintelligible whispers, like hundreds of voices speaking at once. The third open cage was directly ahead, blocking the path to the elevator. From it emerged a mass of shadows and twisted metal, with multiple arms ending in torture instruments, hooks, saws, pincers. In the center, a single red eye stared at Leo. It was the architect of pain, the entity that dismantled its victims piece by piece. It moved slowly, savoring Leo's fear. The instruments on its arms rotated. Leo tried to run, but his legs wouldn't obey. The floor beneath his feet began to move, as if it were breathing. From the surface emerged small hands that grabbed his ankles, preventing him from moving. The hands were small, like children's, but had sharp claws that pierced his skin. The entity extended a metal arm with a rusty claw. It grabbed Leo's arm with force, breaking the bones. Leo screamed in pain. The architect began its work. A hook tore his chest, a saw cut his leg, pincers burned his flesh. As he was being dismantled, Leo saw something forming on the walls around him. Faces, dozens of them, emerging from the surface as if they were pressing from inside out. Faces contorted in agony, mouths open in silent screams. Among them, he recognized Maya and Chris, their eyes now empty, their expressions frozen in eternal terror. His mind began to fragment under the torture. He saw flashes of his life, of Maya, of his dreams of fame, all dissolving in agony. The architect's red eye seemed to feed on his suffering. In a last moment of lucidity, Leo realized that the red cross visible through the window was Anticross. It was a symbol, an ancient sigil pulsing with evil energy. And then he understood. The 11th floor wasn't just a place, it was a living entity, an organism that fed on souls, and they had just been its most recent meal. There was no mercy, just the slow deconstruction of a human being, until a final scream escaped Leo's lips before darkness swallowed him. The Grand Blackwood Hotel will enter demolition in the world of the living. No one will find the bodies of Leo, Maya, or Chris. They have become part of the 11th Floor's collection, new exhibits in the zoo of souls. The elevator game has its rules, and the main one is, the house always wins. Some portals should never be opened, some legends should never be tested. Weeks later, a new video appeared on the Legend Hunters channel. It was a static recording, showing only a dark corridor. But those who watched until the end and turned up the volume could hear, very faintly, 3 different voices whispering, "Come play with us. The elevator is waiting." Thank you for watching this journey. If terror still pulses in your veins, if the shadows seem longer tonight, then our work is done. Subscribe for more stories like this. Leave your like if you appreciate a desperate ending. And comment, which of the Threshold's wardens did you like the most?